Picture this. You are sitting in a candlelit cafe in Tallinn's Old Town. The walls are medieval stone, the mulled wine is warm in your hands, and around you, at nearly every table, are groups of women. Beautiful, educated, confident women. Laughing, talking, living their lives. And you start to look around and you think, where are all the men? That question pulled me down a rabbit hole I was not prepared for. Because what I found was not just a quirk of one city or one night out. What I found was a demographic reality that has quietly shaped the way women live, love, and survive across this entire corner of the world. And Estonia, this tiny digital fairy tale country on the edge of the Baltic Sea, sits at the very heart of it. My name is Julia. I travel the world talking about culture, dating, and what it actually feels like to be a woman navigating love in different places. And today, I am taking you somewhere that genuinely surprised me. Somewhere that made me rethink everything I thought I understood about gender, partnership, and loneliness. Welcome to Estonia, and to the story of why so many remarkable women here are living their lives without a man beside them. Part 1. The numbers that started everything. Let me give you a number. 117. That is the approximate number of women for every 100 men in Estonia. It sounds small, right? A 17-person gap. But when you start to think about what that means across an entire population of just 1.5 million people, and when you start to layer in all the reasons behind it, the picture becomes something much more profound than a simple statistic. Estonia is one of the most gender-imbalanced countries in the entire European Union. And it is not alone. Its Baltic neighbors, Latvia and Lithuania, sit in a similar situation. Latvia actually holds the record as the most female-heavy country in Europe by proportion. But Estonia's story has its own particular flavor, shaped by centuries of occupation, Soviet-era trauma, post-independence upheaval, and a uniquely modern set of pressures that are still playing out right now. To understand why there are so few men, you have to go back. Not to last year or the decade before. You have to go back to the Second World War, to the Soviet deportations, to the waves of forced emigration that swept through the Baltic states and took enormous numbers of men away, to labor camps, to battlefields, to graves without names. The demographic wound inflicted on Estonia during those decades never fully healed. Generations of women grew up with fathers missing, brothers absent, the social structure of family and partnership fundamentally fractured. Then came the Soviet occupation itself, which lasted until 1991. And during those decades, something happened to men and masculinity in Estonia that is still talked about today, quietly and carefully, over kitchen tables and in therapy rooms. The occupation created a culture of suppression, of hopelessness, of numbing. And for many Estonian men, that numbing took the form of alcohol. The drinking culture that took root during the Soviet era carved through the male population in ways that shortened lives, destroyed families, and left women to hold everything together. When Estonia regained independence in 1991, the country erupted with possibility. It digitized faster than almost any nation on Earth, building e-government, e-residency, startups, and a remarkable tech sector practically from scratch. Estonian women, already self-reliant after decades of necessity, threw themselves into education, careers, and civic life. And many Estonian men, still processing the cultural whiplash of the transition, struggled to find their footing. The result was a divergence, not a dramatic, headline-grabbing split, but a slow, steady pulling apart of the trajectories of men and women in this society. More women in universities, more women in professional roles. Higher male mortality rates from alcohol-related illness, accidents, and suicide, and a growing, quiet, persistent reality. There are simply not enough men to go around. Part 2, the city and the countryside. Now, when I talk about the gender imbalance in Estonia, I need to be careful not to paint one single picture, because the experience is very different depending on where you are. Tallinn, the capital, is a young, cosmopolitan city. It has a tech scene, a startup culture, an increasingly international population. There are men here, Estonian men, Finnish tourists who hop the ferry over for weekends, expats from across Europe and beyond. The imbalance exists, but it is softened by the city's energy and diversity. But step outside Tallinn, drive an hour or two into the Estonian countryside, into the small towns and villages and farming communities that make up most of this country's geography, and the picture shifts dramatically. Young men have been leaving rural Estonia for decades, first to Tallinn, then abroad, to Finland, to Sweden, to the United Kingdom before Brexit, to wherever work and opportunity could be found. What they leave behind are communities that skew older and female and increasingly defined by a kind of stoic, self-sufficient womanhood that is almost breathtaking to witness. I spoke to a woman, I will call her Marika, who lives in a small town in southern Estonia, near the Latvian border. She is in her late 40s, runs a small guest house, keeps a vegetable garden, manages her own finances, raises her teenage daughter alone, and has not been in a serious relationship in over a decade. Not because she does not want one, but because, as she put it to me, the men who are left here are either married or they are the kind of men who make your life harder, not easier. That sentence has stayed with me. The men who make your life harder, not easier. It is not a bitter statement. It is a practical one. It reflects something that comes up again and again when you talk to women in Estonia. This very clear-eyed, almost mathematical assessment of what a partner brings to a life and whether the emotional and practical cost of certain relationships is worth paying. Estonian women are not sitting around lamenting their singleness in the way that popular culture might expect. They are building businesses, raising children, maintaining friendships, traveling, making art, growing food. Their lives are full. But there is, underneath all of that fullness, a kind of loneliness that is harder to name, and that loneliness is shaped not just by the absence of men, but by the particular emotional landscape of the Estonian male character itself. Part 3. The Silent Man. Here is something that every foreigner who has spent time in Estonia will eventually say, usually in a tone of baffled affection. Estonian men are quiet, deeply, sometimes inscrutably quiet. There is a word in Estonian, tagasihoidlik, that roughly translates to reserved or held back. It describes a quality that Estonians, and particularly Estonian men, often wear like a second skin. There is a cultural valorization of silence, of not showing emotion, of enduring rather than expressing. Some of it comes from the Lutheran tradition, which historically shaped Baltic culture with its emphasis on austerity and restraint. Some of it comes from the Soviet era, when expressing the wrong thought or feeling could genuinely put you in danger. And some of it is simply the particular personality of a people who have historically lived in close relationship with a dark, quiet, vast northern landscape. Whatever its roots, this emotional reticence creates real challenges in relationships. Women I spoke to in Estonia, across age groups and backgrounds, returned again and again to a version of the same experience, trying to connect emotionally with a partner who simply does not have the vocabulary or the comfort, or in some cases, the sobriety, to meet them there. One woman, a graphic designer in her 30s named Lise, described her relationship history to me with a kind of wry precision. "My first boyfriend was nice," she said. "But when I tried to talk to him about feelings, he would just go very still and look at the wall. Not angrily, just absent. Like the conversation was not happening." She paused. "It is very hard to build something with someone who is not really present." This is not a universal portrait of Estonian men, of course. There are emotionally available, communicative, wonderful Estonian men. I met some. But the cultural pattern is real enough that it shapes the dating landscape in significant ways. It means that many women, particularly educated, emotionally articulate women, find themselves in a chronic mismatch. They want depth, and they keep finding distance. And here is where it gets more complicated. Because Estonian women, perhaps because of exactly this dynamic, perhaps because of their history of self-reliance, have developed their own emotional armor. They are not effusive. They are not openly vulnerable. They value independence and privacy and do not wear their hearts on their sleeves. In some ways, the men and the women of Estonia are perfectly matched in their restraint. In other ways, that mutual reserve can create a relationship environment where nobody feels truly seen, where the connection everyone craves quietly starves beneath a surface of competent, tidy independence. Part 4. The drinking. I cannot tell this story without talking honestly about alcohol. Because in Estonia, as in much of Eastern Europe and the former Soviet space, alcohol is not just a social habit. It is a public health crisis, and it falls overwhelmingly on men. Estonia has one of the highest rates of alcohol-related mortality in Europe. Men alcohol-related causes at dramatically higher rates than women. Liver disease, accidents, violence, exacerbated by drinking. These are not rare occurrences. They are statistical realities that have shortened male life expectancy and destabilized families across the country for generations. The drinking culture has its roots in the Soviet era, when cheap, available, and, in the context of an occupied, suppressed existence, a comprehensible escape. The transition to independence in the 90s brought economic chaos, unemployment, and a kind of identity crisis for men who had been shaped by one system and now faced a completely different one. The drinking did not stop. For many, it accelerated. Estonia has worked hard over the past 2 decades to address this. Taxes have been raised, advertising restricted, public health campaigns launched, and there has been genuine progress. Drinking rates have fallen, particularly among younger generations. But the legacy is deep, and its effects on the gender balance and on the emotional landscape of relationships are still very much present. For women who have grown up with fathers or brothers or partners affected by dependency, the impact is not just statistical. It is personal and visceral. It shapes what they look for in a partner, or whether they look at all. It creates a wariness, a watchfulness, a readiness to self-protect that can make true intimacy feel like a risk not worth taking. I talked to a woman who works as a social worker in Tallinn. I will call her Anu, who deals every day with families affected by addiction. She told me that one of the most common things she hears from women in her caseload is some version of, "I would rather be alone." Not with resignation, but with genuine conviction. Alone means predictable. Alone means safe. Alone means the household runs the way you want it to run. It is a devastating thing to hear and understand completely at the same time. Part 5. The educated woman problem. Estonia has an education system that is consistently ranked among the best in Europe. Estonian students top international rankings in science and mathematics. And crucially, Estonian women go to university in dramatically higher numbers than Estonian men. Roughly 60% of Estonian university students are women. In some fields, the proportion is even higher. This has produced a generation of highly educated, professionally ambitious women who look around the dating pool and find it thin. This is not a uniquely Estonian phenomenon. It is a pattern playing out across much of the developed world, from the United States to South Korea, from Germany to Australia. As women's educational attainment has outpaced men's, the traditional script of the woman partnering with a man who is her social or educational equal or superior has become harder and harder to follow. And this matters, not because of snobbery, but because education shapes values, ambitions, communication styles, and life trajectories in ways that make long-term compatibility genuinely more complex. In Estonia, this educational gap is particularly pronounced, and it intersects with all the other factors we have been talking about. The numerical imbalance, the emotional reticence, the alcohol culture, to create a dating environment that many women describe as genuinely difficult to navigate. And here is a nuance that I think often gets lost in these conversations. The problem is not that educated women are too demanding. The problem is that the structures that were supposed to produce eligible partners, good schools, stable employment, a culture that supports male emotional development, have not kept pace with the transformation in women's lives. Estonian women evolved faster, not because they are superior, but because necessity and opportunity combined to push them forward. And the men are catching up, slowly, but the gap is real, and it has consequences for love. A young woman named Katarina, a 28-year-old lawyer I met in Tallinn, put it simply. "I do not want someone to take care of me," she said. "I want someone to grow with me, and that is much harder to find. Part 6. Love in the digital age. Estonia is the most digitized country in Europe. You can vote online, file taxes online, access almost every government service from your phone. The country practically invented e-governance. And so it will not surprise you to hear that Estonians date online, a lot. Dating apps are enormously popular in Estonia. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, all the usual suspects are present, plus a few regional platforms. And in theory, this should help solve the numbers problem, right? Algorithms can surface compatible people, geography becomes less of a barrier, the pool expands. In practice, it is more complicated. The emotional dynamics that make dating challenging in Estonia do not disappear just because the initial connection happens via screen. An Estonian man who is reticent face-to-face is often also reticent in his messages. The apps generate matches that frequently lead nowhere, either fizzling out in the texting phase or producing a handful of dates that never progress beyond polite distance. Women I spoke to described a kind of exhausting carousel of online dating. You swipe, you match, you exchange careful measured messages for a week, you meet for coffee, you have a pleasant but slightly formal conversation, and then the contact gradually fades. Not cruelly, not dramatically, just quietly, in the Estonian way. And there is another dimension to the digital age that is reshaping the gender landscape in Estonia in real time: emigration. Young Estonians are mobile. They speak English, they have EU passports, they have skills that are in demand across the continent. And when young Estonian men leave to work in Finland, to study in Sweden, to build a startup in Berlin, they sometimes do not come back, or they come back with a foreign partner, or they build a life elsewhere and only visit for Christmas. The women, statistically, are more likely to stay, to build their roots in Estonia, to care for aging parents, to maintain the communities that hold a place together. And so the imbalance compounds, quietly, year by year. Part 7. What foreign men bring and take. Estonia's capital, Tallinn, has become increasingly international. It has a significant Finnish community. Finnish tourists have been crossing the Baltic for decades, originally for cheaper alcohol, more recently for the city's genuine cultural attractions. It has a growing expat tech community, drawn by Estonia's digital infrastructure and relatively low taxes. And it has a dating scene in which foreign men and Estonian women increasingly meet. This dynamic is complicated and worth looking at honestly. On one level, it is simply people meeting people, cross-cultural connections that can be wonderful, expansive, life-changing for both parties. I have met several couples, Estonian women with Finnish, British, American, German partners who have genuinely beautiful relationships built on real mutual respect and fascination. But there is also a shadow side. Foreign men in Estonia, particularly the Finnish weekend tourists who have given Tallinn a reputation as a party destination, sometimes treat the city as a place where the usual rules do not apply, where Estonian women, perceived as beautiful and available, become part of the experience, the entertainment. This has created a wariness in Estonian women toward foreign attention, a calibrated suspicion about whether the interest is genuine or whether you are simply an exotic backdrop in someone else's holiday story. The women who have had good experiences with foreign partners tend to describe a specific quality they found refreshing: expressiveness, men who said what they felt, men who asked questions and listened to the answers, men who made plans and followed through. Things that, in the context of Estonian dating culture, can feel almost startlingly direct. He texted me the day after our first date to say he had a really good time, one woman told me, laughing at herself a little. And I thought, is he okay? Is something wrong? In Estonia, you wait. You always wait. You never say it so clearly. She shook her head. But then I thought, actually, why? Why is the waiting better? What does the waiting give us? It is a question that seems to sit at the heart of something Estonia is working out, collectively and individually, about what it wants love to look like. Part 8. The mothers. Here is a fact that I find both remarkable and quietly heartbreaking. Estonia has one of the highest rates of single motherhood in the European Union. Somewhere between 20 and 25% of families with children in Estonia are headed by single mothers. In some regions, it is higher. These are not all women who were abandoned or left. Many are women who made a choice, who decided to have children outside of formal partnership, or who ended partnerships that were not working and chose to raise their children alone, rather than in a household defined by conflict or absence. Estonian women have a pragmatic relationship to single motherhood that I found striking. It is not stigmatized in the way it might be in more socially conservative cultures. It is simply what many families look like. The state supports this to a degree. Estonia has generous parental leave policies, some of the best in Europe. There is publicly subsidized childcare. There are social support structures that make single parenthood survivable in a way that it simply is not in many other countries. But survivable is not the same as easy. And the women raising children alone in Estonia are doing something genuinely hard. They are working full-time and coming home to full households. They are the breadwinner and the cook, and the emotional anchor and the homework helper, all in one body. They are tired in ways that a good night's sleep does not fix. And many of them, I want to say this carefully but clearly, are also deeply, quietly proud. There is a kind of dignity in the Estonian single mother's story that has nothing to do with making the best of a bad situation. It has to do with knowing exactly what you are capable of and building a life on the bedrock of that knowledge. Marika, the woman who runs the guest house near the Latvian border, has a daughter who is 16. When I asked if she ever thought about looking for a partner, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Sometimes, in the winter mostly. The winters are long." She smiled. "But my daughter and I, we are good. We have built something. I would not want to put something fragile inside that." Part 9. The young women now. I want to be careful not to make Estonia sound like a country frozen in post-Soviet amber, because it is not. The younger generation of Estonian women, the 20 and 30-somethings, are navigating a landscape that is shifting in some ways faster than anywhere else in Europe. Young Estonian women are among the most digitally literate, professionally mobile, and globally connected in the world. Many have studied abroad, traveled extensively, worked in multinational environments. They have more reference points for what relationships can look like. They have more language for emotional needs, more comfort with therapy, more willingness to name what they want and walk away from what they do not. They are also, many of them, deeply ambivalent about traditional partnership models. Not anti-love, not anti-men, but genuinely questioning about why the traditional path, meet, commit, marry, have children, build a domestic life together, should be the default. Why not build a life first and see if someone fits into it, rather than building a life around someone who might not stay? I spent an evening with a group of women in their late 20s and early 30s in Tallinn, a mix of Estonians and one woman who had moved here from Latvia. We talked for hours over dinner and wine, and the conversation kept circling back to the same theme: the desire for partnership that was additive rather than subtractive, for a relationship that made their already full lives fuller rather than depleting them. "I have watched my mother's generation," one of them said, a copywriter named Anneli. "They gave so much, they held everything together, and they did not ask for much back. And I look at some of those women now, and I think they deserve more. We deserve more." She paused. "Not more things, more presence, more equality, more being seen. More being seen." I think that might be the essential longing underneath all of this. Not just in Estonia, but in all the conversations I have about love and partnership and the ways women everywhere are renegotiating what they are willing to accept. The desire at its core to be truly seen by another person. Part 10. The Latvian Echo. I want to step briefly across the border because Estonia's story does not exist in isolation. Latvia sits right next door, and Latvia is actually the most female-heavy country in Europe. The gender imbalance there is even more pronounced. Roughly 118 women for every 100 men, with the gap widening in rural areas and older age groups. Latvia's situation has the same roots as Estonia's. wartime losses, Soviet deportations, post-independence instability, male emigration. But Latvia has a specific additional layer, an extraordinarily high rate of emigration among working-age men, particularly to the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Germany in the years following Latvia's accession to the EU in 2004. So many Latvian men left in the mid-2000s that the country lost a significant percentage of its working-age male population within a single decade. What they left behind was, in many cases, their families. Some sent money home and planned to return. Some built new lives abroad and gradually, painfully disconnected. The phenomenon was common enough that it has its own social texture in Latvia, a generation of women who raised children across a physical and emotional distance from their partners, who managed households and eventually rebuilt their sense of independence out of necessity. The emotional consequences of this are still playing out in Latvia today. And the dating landscape there has a quality very similar to Estonia's: educated, capable, independent women, a demographic shortage of men, a cultural inheritance of stoicism on both sides. And underneath all of it, the same human need for connection that never quite goes away. Part 11, the Lithuanian contrast. Lithuania, the southernmost of the three Baltic states, shares many of the same historical experiences as Estonia and Latvia, but its social culture has a distinct texture that shapes its gender dynamics differently. Lithuania is more Catholic than its northern neighbors, and that religious heritage has historically placed different pressures on women, less around independence and more around family, duty, and the performance of femininity. Lithuanian women are often described within the region as more traditionally oriented in their expectations of relationships, more likely to want marriage, more likely to prioritize partnership as a life goal alongside career. And yet Lithuania has the same demographic challenges: similar gender imbalance, similar male immigration, similar alcohol-related mortality rates among men. The result is an interesting tension, a culture that still holds up the traditional family as an ideal, in a demographic reality that makes achieving that ideal increasingly difficult. Lithuanian women I spoke to described a kind of pressure from multiple directions, from society to be partnered and maternal, from personal experience to understand that many available men are not reliable partners, and from their own ambitions pushing them toward independence. One woman in Vilnius described it as being pulled by 3 different ropes in 3 different directions. The rope of tradition saying, be a good wife, the rope of experience saying, protect yourself, and the rope of modernity saying, build your own life first. Navigating those tensions is the central emotional work of many Lithuanian women's adult lives. What strikes me, moving through these 3 countries, is how similar the underlying experience is, even as the cultural expression varies. The loneliness is the same, the self-reliance is the same, the careful, calibrated hope that someone good might still appear, and the equally calibrated readiness to be fine if they do not, is the same. Part 12. What men say. I want to be fair here, and I want to spend some time on the male perspective, because I think it would be easy to tell this story as a simple narrative of women suffering and men failing, and that is not the whole truth. The men I talked to in Estonia, particularly the ones willing to engage honestly, which was not a majority but enough, told a different and more complicated story. Many of them are also lonely. Many of them also feel the gap between what they want in their lives and what they are currently living. Many of them have absorbed messages about masculinity that told them not to need, not to feel, not to show vulnerability, and they are living with the consequences of those messages in the form of isolation and disconnection. One man, an engineer in his early 40s, quiet and thoughtful in exactly the Estonian way, told me that he had been single for 6 years. Not by choice, but because every time he got close to someone, he felt a kind of panic. Like the closeness itself is dangerous, he said, and I know it is not rational. I know she is not going to take anything from me, but my body does not know that. That description of relational panic, of intimacy as threat, is something I encounter in different forms across many cultures. But in Estonia, it has a particular weight, rooted in a history that really did make vulnerability dangerous. that really did punish openness and reward the closed, armored self. The men who feel this are not villains. They are people shaped by the same traumatic history as the women, just shaped differently. The question, and it is a question that Estonia is only beginning to grapple with systematically, is how to heal that. How to build a culture where men can develop emotional literacy without feeling like they are surrendering something essential. How to close the distance between Estonian men and women that has grown quietly and painfully over generations. Part 13. What changes? Estonia is a country that knows how to transform. This is, after all, a nation that went from Soviet occupation to one of the world's most advanced digital democracies in 3 decades. If any culture has demonstrated the capacity for rapid systemic change, it is this one. And there are signs of shift. Younger Estonian men are more emotionally available than their fathers and grandfathers. Therapy has become less stigmatized. The conversation about masculinity and what it is allowed to look like is happening quietly, in ways it simply was not a generation ago. The alcohol mortality rate, while still too high, has been falling. Educational gaps are slowly narrowing as more young men stay in school longer. On the women's side, there is a growing political and civic engagement with the structural issues that shape the gender balance. Estonia has been a world leader in gender equality in the workplace and in government. It elected a female president in 2016. It has active feminist movements that are pushing on everything from equal pay to domestic violence to the representation of women in tech. None of this is enough yet. None of this has fixed the loneliness or balanced the numbers or healed the emotional inheritance of the Soviet era. But it is movement. It is the beginning of a different story. And maybe that is the most honest thing I can say about Estonia and love. It is a country in the middle of its story. Not at a happy ending, not at a tragic one, but right in the complicated, messy, hopeful middle, where real change is slow and real people are doing their best with what history handed them. Part 14. What I learned. I came to Estonia expecting to report on a demographic curiosity. I left having been changed in small but real ways by what I found there. I have thought a lot since leaving about Marika and her guest house and her winter loneliness and her daughter and the life she has built with her own hands. About Lise and the boyfriend who went still and stared at the wall when she tried to talk about feelings. About Katarina, the lawyer who wants to grow with someone, not be taken care of by someone. About the engineer who described intimacy as danger. What these people share is not a simple story of victimhood or failure. What they share is the attempt, the continuing, imperfect, hopeful attempt to build genuine human connection inside a set of historical and cultural circumstances that have made it harder than it should be. And I think about how many places in the world have their own version of that story, their own particular obstacles to love, their own inherited silences, their own demographic wounds, their own cultural scripts about what men and women are supposed to be to each other, and the ways those scripts fail the actual, complicated human beings trying to live inside them. Estonia is a specific place, with specific history, but the longing it sits inside, the longing to be seen, to be met, to build something real with another person, that is as universal as anything I have ever encountered in my years of travel. Conclusion. So, where did all the men go? Some of them too young, in wars and camps and from the slow violence of addiction. Some of them left, to Finland, to Sweden, to wherever the work was. Some of them are there, physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. Behind glass, behind silence, behind the careful armor of a culture that taught them feeling was weakness. And the women are there, living, building, raising children and running businesses and tending their gardens in the long Baltic winters and sitting in candlelit cafes in Tallinn's Old Town, talking and laughing and being alive in the fullest sense of that word. They are not waiting to be saved. They never were. But many of them, if you sit with them long enough, if you ask the right question and then stay quiet so they can actually answer it, will tell you that they are still hoping, still leaving a little space somewhere in the carefully constructed architecture of their independent lives for someone who might show up and be worth letting in. That hope, stubborn and patient and real, might be the most Estonian thing of all. Thank you for watching. If this video moved you, or made you think, or made you want to book a flight to Tallinn, I completely understand. Leave me a comment below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories about the hidden emotional landscapes of the places I travel, you know where the subscribe button is. Until next time, travel far, love honestly.